back to Happy Life, Better Life. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad to have you here. So I wanted to continue with Unbreakable. We're doing chapter 6 today on just dealing with a myriad of emotions after a divorce or separation, because usually that comes up. It comes up. That's pretty much what I can say most about that. You're going to feel a bunch of different things. And I want to try to keep this as uplifting as possible and as encouraging as possible, even though sometimes we're talking about some hard topics, some topics that can be challenging. So again, you might see me glance over as I'm looking at some of my notes, because I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. But as we talked about it before, divorce and separation can bring up just so many different emotions. Everything from the good, the bad, to the ugly, There can be a lot of different things going on. And some days you can feel all of those things in one day. You might feel happy, you might feel sad, you might feel angry, and you might feel it all in one day, in one sitting. And so first I want to talk about grief and loss, because there was a period for me where I went through a period of mourning. I'm telling you, it felt like somebody died. And I did a whole video on that one topic, when you're mourning the death of your marriage, because literally it did feel like someone died. And even when separation is necessary, there still can be a deep sense of loss. You can really feel that loss of that other person, especially if you spent years with that person, as you identified yourself as their husband or wife or significant other. And then all of a sudden it's just you go through many changes there. And a grieving process may begin to happen, and you have to allow yourself to fully feel it. You can't just try to snip it and, because then you won't heal properly. If you want to heal, if you really want to heal and move forward as a whole person, you have to allow yourself to go through your whole process. And so a lot of people who ended up getting divorced said they went through a period of mourning where it really felt like someone died. So acknowledgement of grief instead of suppressing it is vital for your own emotional healing. You might also feel a sense of relief, a sense of renewal, because it depends on too what kind of a relationship you were in. And if you were suppressed, if you were abused, if you were neglected, then you could be feeling more optimistic about things. You might be feeling some pain, but you might have moments of relief and gratitude, especially if the relation carried years and years of conflict. Okay, so you could feel guilty about being so happy. You could feel guilty about feeling so free, not having to ask for permission to be or to do or to have, so these are things that also can come up. And also embracing your freedom is a part of that. So naturally, anger and resentment can come in. I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, because I think that this is just typical for most of us, but I'm just going to briefly just give you a few points on that. Anger often surfaces as a natural response to pain. It can be directed to an ex-partner, oneself, or even the circumstances that were beyond your control. While anger is a normal reaction, holding on to it for too long, that's important. Holding on to anger for too long can definitely be destructive, and you don't want to do that. And you don't want to spill your anger out on everybody and everything around you. You don't want to do that, and we already talked about that in some of the other videos for Unbreakable. Processing anger in healthy ways through journaling, therapy, physical activity helps to prevent it from becoming a lasting emotional burden. Like, for instance, people go to those places where you just break a bunch of stuff. you might need to do that. If you need to put those goggles on, put that suit on, and get a bat in your hand and start swinging, if you need that, hey, let that be part of your process. Fear and uncertainty. Oh, yes, everybody goes through a sense of fear and uncertainty about the future. The unknown can bring a lot of anxiety, fear of even being alone, fear of financial instability, fear of rebuilding from scratch. I had some of that. I totally did. While these feelings can be paralyzing, they can also open the door to new possibilities. Over time, learning to embrace uncertainty can create resilience and confidence. And that's true. That is so true. You can move forward. You know what they say about courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to move on despite it. So remember that. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the ability to move on despite it. Okay? So I have a few things that I want you to reflect on. Number one, what emotions have I been avoiding, and how might I acknowledge them in a way that helps me to heal? So think about that. What emotions have you been avoiding, and how can you acknowledge those emotions in a way that's healthy and healing for you? Number two, in what ways have you expressed your anger, and have those expressions been helpful or harmful? Okay. Number three, what fears about the future could be holding you back, and how can you begin to face them with courage? Whatever it is that you're afraid of, identify that thing and then figure out, how can I face that in a way that empowers me? So the conclusion of the matter with this is the emotional journey after a divorce or separation is complex and deeply personal. Your journey is not going to look like someone else's journey. So you're not going to try to, I don't know, sometimes people feel like, well, I handled it this way. I've had this conversation with a friend of mine because when his marriage ended, he handled things very quickly. But there were certain things that happened also that were different in certain ways from mine. So, when he knew it was over, it was it, he just went out and got it done. For me, honestly, I was probably separated for about 5 years before we finalized the divorce. I'm not saying you should do that. We lived in different states, and I don't know if it was exactly 5 years. It was probably more like 3 or 4 or something. But at any rate, we did drag that process out. And I don't recommend doing that because I didn't realize how it was hindering me in certain ways. It really was. It was hindering me from fully being able to move forward. And I didn't realize too that other men would look at that as you're really not free because you're still married to someone. So you belong to someone else. And because I was like, I don't belong to anybody, But the truth was, legally, yeah, you did. It was a document. And in order to dissolve that, you had to legally do it. So I had to go through the process. So I'm saying to you, your process, your journey may look different, but also make sure that you're moving forward in it, Allow yourself to feel however you feel. Don't stay there though, especially if it's negative. You got to pick yourself up, got to put your, big boy or big girl pants on, and you got to move forward. So thank you for joining me today. As always, I want you to live a happy life and a better life. Have a great day. Bye-bye.